G'day, I'm Ryan, your Chief Espresso Officer, and today I'm going to look at why is your puck wet or dry and what you can do about it to fix it. Now, I'm not saying you must read your coffee puck like tea leaves, but you can analyze it as you're making your coffees throughout the day, or if it's just the one coffee that you're making per day, and then at least know what you need to do the next time you make it. What can you look for in your puck? Well, I bet you've never looked at your puck in proper detail, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. So what I'm going to suggest is the next time you make your coffee, knock it out into the box and see what does it look like. Does it come out sloppy? Does it leave a lot of coffee grinds left in the basket? Does it come out super dry and crack straight away? Does it come out at all? Sometimes it even sticks to the dispersion screen up underneath your group head and doesn't come out in the basket anyway, and then just plops down onto your tray. So have a look at it, and then we'll try to cover as much as we can. This is obviously a very short video, so it's not going to be something that I can cover every single situation, but maybe there's something in there to get you some understanding to help you get better coffee at home. So look at the most common reasons right now, but if you have a specific situation, just ask me in the chat below. I answer most of the questions that get asked, so if you have a specific situation and you don't know the answer to, pop it in the chat below. And of course, give me a thumbs up, give me a like, give me a subscribe, and help me make more of these videos for you in the future. So you can see here, there's water sitting on top. And this is a classic one because this is from two reasons. One, there's just way too much water for all of the grinds to absorb all of that. So we've either underdosed the volume of coffee, or the coffee grinds are just so fine that the moment they hit the water, the moment the water hits it, it swells those little grinds up and they cause no way for the water to continue to go through. And that's what we call an over extraction, because the coffee just keeps getting cooked and cooked and cooked with the boiling water, and there's not enough coffee in there to soak up all of the water, and so then the water just sits and pools on top and it can't push through. You can see now it's been sitting a little while, some of the water has actually dripped through, but you can see this is really sloppy, and if I knock it out onto the bench, you can see super sloppy. Just look at that, like just slops. And so this is because we ground it too fine. This we find happens a lot with the digital doserless grinders, because a doserless grinder means you put in the time and the size, but the moment you have to change the grind size, a lot of people forget that you actually have to also adjust the time, because if your grinder doses out 20 grams in say 20 seconds, then when you make it finer, it actually has to work harder and longer to grind more coffee to get up to that 20 gram, so it's actually going to take longer than that 20 seconds. Conversely, if you make it coarser, you have to reduce the amount of time because it grinds all of those beans a little bit quicker. This probably has come from someone who thought that they needed to make the coffee finer, and they tweaked the size on the grind size, but they forgot to adjust the amount of time to fill this up. Now, if you're weighing every coffee, this wouldn't happen because you know that you're aiming for 20 grams in this basket. I think this problem comes from people who just are not weighing their coffee. If you have 20 grams all the time, then it doesn't matter how long your grinder grinds for, because you might need to grind a little bit more to make it up to that 20 grams. This is the first one that I would be looking for. When you look at your puck, as soon as you pull it out, is it sloppy? Does it have all that water on the top? If so, you need to add a bit more coffee into the basket and increase the size of the dose so it allows that water to push through, but not too much. When we're talking about adjustments here, we're talking about micro adjustments. We're not talking about big swings on your grinder. Really, just do one. And if you're making one coffee a day, it's going to be really hard, because you're going to have to remember that most grinders have what's called retention. And retention means they hold a bit of that grind up inside the little area between the hopper and the doser. And so you will need to remember that maybe 20 or 30 grams might just still be in there, even if you've made a shot from one coffee. So when you adjust it, make sure that you purge the coffee out, or if you don't want to waste it, just make one extra coffee before you make any other adjustment. So that's when we look at the coffee is too fine. So here's a dry puck. And this particular dry puck comes from not necessarily having too coarse grinds, because there is two different ways to get a dry puck. This one, because you can see the indentation of the screw in the center of the puck, means I've actually overdosed it. If you weren't weighing your puck, again, this is what would happen if you overdosed it. I deliberately overdosed this to 28 grams when we would normally use a recipe of 22.5. I didn't leave enough headroom between the top of the dispersion screen where the water comes out. So what happened is as soon as the water hit, it expanded those coffee beans right up to fit neatly into that entire space, the little void where the gap is between the dispersion screen and the top of the coffee grind, and that's what caused this complete little indentation of the screw there. So as I knock it out, you know, it doesn't come out very easily. It did come out in one piece, but you can see here it's like slightly darker around there, a bit burnt, and obviously cracked into slices, because what it means is as the water's come through, it's hit certain spots, had to maybe pool there for a bit, and that's why it's created these kind of like slices in between. And that's what a dry puck really sits. So that's one way of doing a dry puck, and that's called overdosing. So elimination, how to eliminate this is you would get some set of scales here, so you would always dose to the right amount. Now, you don't have to go out and buy a set of scales. If you want to eyeball it, you certainly can. The way you do that is, say you've got your mound of coffee coming over there a little bit, you want to just use the back of your finger to just evenly just spread it across and just sort of swipe off any of the excess coffee. Now it does cause a little bit of wastage because you're just swiping that off into the knockbox, but at least you know that that's level. So that when you compress it, when you tamp down, you leave yourself about 5 mil of headroom between the top of the lip of the basket and where the grinds will sit. And that gives you enough expansion room to know that you're not going to overdose your basket. Now, here's another dry puck. And yes, you can see a little bit of indentation, but it's not as well defined. And see how it's kind of like sand, little sand shapes on top of the grinds? That's because this grind is too coarse. And so what we have here is essentially an under-extracted coffee. It'll taste quite sour or hollow, and it won't have a lot of flavor, and certainly not enough intensity to cut through milk, so it'll taste like a weak coffee. And similar to the other one, it comes out fairly nice, but it is very brittle. It'll break apart very easily. So you can see even the difference between the grind size here and here of the wet sloppy puck. There's quite a big difference in there. Here you can hardly see any grinds at all. Here, massive amounts of grinds. And then different to this dry puck over here, where the grinds are still small, but you can see it's quite dry and brittle. So this is under-extracted coffee. And the way that you need to fix this is to fine up your grinds in the grinder. Now, I just want to explain something else as well that's really interesting. So if you have a naked portafilter, which is like this, see it doesn't have a base on it, it doesn't have the spouts there, and you can see the bottom of the basket. What sometimes you can see is a bit of staining on the basket. This is very slight here, but you can see there's a little bit of staining on that side. And if I knock it out, I'm hoping that that correlates. There's a bit of blackening here. I might even have to do it again to just make it more obvious. But this bit of blackening here is often you can see it staining the basket a little bit after the extraction has come through. And that just relates to the fact that this extraction has been a little bit blocked on this side here. So that could also be causing an unbalance. If that area over there is not stained and this area is stained, and you notice blackening on the sides, the same area of the stain, it means that water has had to struggle to get through there, and it's got to burnt it a little bit. And so that could create a little bit of an unbalanced flavor, because that might be a little bit over extracted, bitter, and this might be under extracted. But I'll try it again and see if we can do it I'm just going to see if I can pack it down to force it to be over extracted in one area. I'm going to put a heap of coffee just on this side, so that whole area there just has more coffee density. I'll try and even move some of this over. This is obviously not what you would do if you were trying to make a nice coffee, but for this experiment it is. And I'm going to press it down so that this side gets compressed more, so it's uneven, because this is sometimes not that extreme, but I have seen people tamp pretty extreme. And this side, you can see it's a lot higher, and the other side's a lot lower. So hopefully this works, and we can see something in the puck. So one thing I really noticed that was unusual was that even though this was the area that I put all the extra coffee on, because I tamped it and it was lower than the other area, I thought just by the fact of tamping it harder, so compressing the higher dosage of grinds in that area, that I would force that one to be over extracted. But what ended up happening was that the pour, and I should have filmed it, but the pour actually came through on this side and kept continually bringing in this side before this side came through. So this area didn't get the extraction that I thought it would. Now let's see, you can definitely see that area is has the staining and it doesn't have it on that side, so that's what I was expecting. And now hopefully when we knock it out, that follows through. Now you can see that correlates to that side there. Pretty interesting. But if you're seeing this with your puck, I really love just looking at your puck just every so often when you knock it out, just to make sure that you know what you're doing, and when you taste it, how that correlates with the puck as well. All right, now we'll move on to eating the pucks.
Oh, he's done it.
Don't do that at home, kids. Can't get that taste out of my mouth now. It was worth it for the shot, I think. So here we have an extraction that you can see is really even. Like there's a little bit of spotting, but I mean that is about as good as an extraction as you can hope for. Yes, super crisp, balanced, it's not muddy, it's not going all over the place, which is what you would expect from an unbalanced extraction. And it doesn't taste too bitter, it doesn't taste too sour, it's got a nice sweetness to it. So we'll knock it out. Yeah, beautiful. So obviously I flaked that little bit off at the end, but that's really nice there. There isn't any area which is too dark, like when you see the blackening parts around here, that's usually an indication that the fines, the really fine grinds, has settled in that spot, and that might have just blocked it up from flowing too freely. But you can see it's not, it's kind of like across, it's even across there. It's not really light in this area and really dark in this area. And if you're experiencing that at home, then I would recommend you looking at a distribution tool for your coffee grinder, or even trying to upgrade your coffee grinder if it's important to you. But thing to remember, so this is nice and squishy. It's not overly dry. It doesn't just crumble, but it does break apart. It's got what I would recall like a sponginess to it. So I compress it, it's not dry, it bounces back a little bit. That's kind of what you're aiming for. So there you have it. There's some things that you can do to get that perfect extraction. Now, as a quick recap, if your coffee is tasting bitter and burnt, and you notice that your coffee puck is quite sloppy, then there's a chance that your grinds are far too fine, or you're underdosing and the water's just not getting through, so it's sitting on top and it's pooling here, and that would actually create quite pretty distinct bitter, burnt sort of flavor, and it might also be very hollow. Now, if your coffee is tasting sour and weak or watery, and you look at your puck and it's very dry and brittle, or there's big boulders in there, then you know that your grind is too coarse, and you're gonna have to fine it up a little bit and not do too much, but just enough so that you get that beautiful, consistent extraction, that nice, balanced, even taste, the sweetness of the sugars coming through, and your puck should be a little bit spongy with a little bit of bounce to it, not too brittle, but not too soggy. There you go. That will help you understand a little bit more about what your coffee is doing at home. I'm Ryan, your Chief Espresso Officer. Enjoy your brew.